Okay, let's discuss the hot weather we're having, causes, and potential reasons why that's being caused. Okay, from a video I just watched, which I'll post down, I've got my history, so I'll have to post it down in descriptions after I make this video. The video that I'm going to reference in the descriptions told me that they measured the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere by drilling cores in the ice caps and in the sediment in the lake beds and seabeds. Kind of like you saw in that movie, The Day After Tomorrow. I think was the name of it. If that's the case, then that means some of the CO2 was captured in that ice. How much CO2 has been released because of the melting of the ice caps? This guy was talking about something called glaciation periods. Well, if we're in a period of, he said we were considered to be in an ice age now, with a slight warming period that's lasted since around about 10 or 11,000 BC. I think he said 11,000 years ago, which actually would come up to about 9,000 BC. The information I got was 11,000 BC from a source I no longer have access to. I think it was a Earth Sciences book that I had from like 8th grade. Now, I don't know what I did with it. Right? I don't know if I threw it away, give it away to somebody or what, but I got rid of it somehow. I wish I knew what it was called and who to credit for that. I'm wearing that book to credit for it. But since I don't have it anymore, there's nothing I can do about that. But basically what we're looking at here is if that ice is melting and there's CO2 captured inside that ice that you can actually measure to tell you how much CO2 was in the atmosphere at a given time, etc., and those glaciers are melting, they're releasing CO2. The question is, how much? When a ton of Greenland's ice shelf melts, how much CO2 does it emit? Tell me. How much CO2 does it emit? That's what I'd like to know. They say it's cars. But cars don't emit CO2 as much as they emit CO1, which is carbon monoxide, not carbon dioxide. So when you consider cars mainly emit carbon monoxide, that's the reason they tell you when you park your car, you say you're out in the middle of a snowstorm or something, they tell you to crack your window. That's to allow the carbon monoxide out of the car that's coming into the car from the smoke exhaust. It can seep into the car and kill you. It's an odorless gas. So why is it they're blaming cars that emit the wrong type of chemical? Or at least as far as I know, they emit the wrong. They probably emit some CO2. But it's mostly CO1 or carbon monoxide. Dioxide stands for two oxides. So carbon dioxide is carbon with two oxygens. Or carbon monoxide is carbon with one oxygen. Another thing, you can't form CO2 without oxygen. That means if you lose your rainforests that produce oxygen, it will eventually have an effect on the amount of CO2 emitted because there won't be any oxygen to react with the carbon. Just some interesting thing to throw out there. Could this carbon dioxide be coming from rocks ice, water even. Maybe it's heating up and evaporating off. I'm not sure what the evaporation temperature of CO2 is. But if I remember right, dry ice is known as CO2. Is colder than regular ice. And if I remember right, it melts before regular ice does. That's something I really need to check up on. And maybe put down in descriptions. Exactly whether or not CO2 ice does melt before regular ice does. So the question is, where is the CO2 coming from? Is it coming from humanity? Sure, we put CO2 in the atmosphere. But how much is coming from man and how much is coming from them glaciers that are melting? All that captured ice. I mean, not captured ice, but all that captured CO2 within the ice. Is the heating of the Earth's surface by the sun causing more CO2 to be released that was previously captured by the Earth's oceans? Big question. Where is the CO2 coming from? Just exactly how much is coming out of them ice shelves. If they could measure it from that far back and tell me how much was in the ice shelf then, and all them ice shelves are melting. It doesn't take much of a temperature change to melt them ice shelves. Well, I thought I'd put that out there and cast a little bit of a question mark as to whether or not some of the CO2, if not a big portion of it, may actually be coming from the melting ice itself. Well, Thomas was out here. Have a good one.